just you and me. Change, yeah, change, can't do it alone. I need some help, y'all. Can't do it alone. Won't get no better if we just let it be. No, 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 no.
Welcome to Truth Forum, a forum to discuss truth in a friendly surrounding, like we do at home at the kitchen table. I'm your host, Dr. Smith. I do have the rights to perform the notes and the lyrics licensed by BMI. I will lead compelling, relatable, and honest conversations. My guests will range from community leaders and professionals and real people whose stories will touch and inspire you. Discussion will center around relationships, real stories, politics, personal struggles, triumphant and compelling topics in the news. If you'd like to be a guest at the kitchen table, you may call us at 269-282-1490. Email us at kingdombuildersworldwide2@gmail.com. Again, I always share with all of you, we learned in Africa that storytelling is an obligation for all those in leadership. It's a time where you begin to share with family members about past, about current, and even about future events. We understand that we have to learn how to connect the now so we can understand the now and the then and the that, so we know where we are in the network. I am so honored, but before I introduce to you my guest, Jim Hosman, I'd like to thank God for my producers, Tiffany Smith in her absence, Ronnie Hoyt, Carl English, Mike Campbell. My son is on Facebook Live. The camera is Kara Bowden and Yvonne Armstrong. My co-host, Doug Jones. Again, I'd like to introduce to you at the kitchen table, Mr. Jim Hosman. I did that intro real quick. I usually have a longer intro, but I think today is going to be a great conversation. I really wanted to give you a great opportunity to be able to talk to us. Before I bring to you our guests, you all know that we are a non-biased. We're not drawing any assumption or conclusion. We're not endorsing any candidates at this present moment. We're just here to be fair and to have a friendly dialogue, because the point of me being the host is to give the audience a fair opportunity to be able to hear our guest or our candidate. In this case, it's a candidate, but also a longtime professional in this city of Calhoun County, well, the city of Battle Creek and the county, Calhoun County. But before I bring my guest on the table, to my co-host, Deacon Jones, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Bishop, how are you doing today?
Well, I'm doing pretty well. How things going with you and the family and all the change of the weather and all that good stuff?
Oh, things are going pretty good. I was actually visiting mom and dad today.
That's right, you're late today?
That's why I was running late.
Gotcha.
Just running late. Okay? Everybody knows that now. I was late today.
Yeah,
but it was for a good reason.
Well, everybody was saying I was late too, because I was on time. Now they want to, but you good. You
but
my buddy.
I was trying to match up with you, Bishop.
I know, but we knew my man was here, and we had to be on time with him. He was
right.
here early today.
Okay.
But, thank you very much. Well, look, first of all, I do this all the time, Mr. Hosman. I share with the audience, for years, black Americans or black votes have been excluded from playing the politics by the official rules of the game. Every time we sought to play by the rules changed or the games ended before we had a chance to play. And therefore, rather than continuing to be like a dog chasing the tail, we need to just simply step back and look outside of the box. So what we're doing today is we're going to, be open-minded and begin to learn and to hear from different candidates. We're getting close to that election period where we'll be having a lot of different individuals that's going to be coming on the show. I'm suggesting ways to which we should alter our behavior or change the accepted rules of politics. But in our instance, we must adhere to the fundamental rules of what they call politics, and they call it quid pro quo. which is basically you scratch my back, I scratch your back. Unfortunately, that is the name of the game. And so what we're doing today is we're going to learn and we're going to listen. We've had different candidates on in the past, and we're really going to ask some really good questions that I think is questions that may be helpful for you. I want to just kind of remind you all, one of the strongest weapons we as Black Americans in the political arsenal is what they call block vote, which is BLOC. Although it's very small, it has a great political potency because it is the nation-only block vote. Example, no other group, now think about this, not women, Hispanic, senior citizens, or even white votes as a block. These voters groups are not loyal to a national political party and rarely give more than 40 to 45% of their votes to any specific political party. But we as Black Americans are the exception. We have this sole distinction of typically aligning to 90% of their votes with a single national political party. For an instant, and you may know this, Deacon, in 1870 until the late 1930s, nearly 100% of this country, Black voters voted as a bloc for the Republican Party. And then from 1940 until the present time, nearly 100% of the county or the country Black voters voted for the Democrats. And of course, you got some balance, but for so long, we've always been that way. We just get together and we just came and we voted. So today, we're going to just listen to a wise man who's been around for a long time, and I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Jim Hodgman. First of all, tell us briefly about yourself, and then tell us about your running for the state rep of the 62nd District. And now it's your show.
Bishop Smith, thank you first for the opportunity to participate in the programming. Deacon Jones, thank you too for this excellent opportunity. I was very pleased when Tiffany Smith, is she related to you?
No. Yes, she is.
How's
She's
she
my
related?
cousin.
Okay.
She's my cousin. See, the last name Smith got me confused. She is my cousin, but her Smith got nothing to do with my Smith.
I see. I was very pleased when she communicated with me and gave me this opportunity about 10 days ago.
Yes,
so
thank you.
You're welcome.
And before you do anything, thank you. I was told, I didn't know, but thank you. You came to our church and helped do some cleaning and moving around when we first moved in. I never knew that I never knew that.
Well, I think people that are active in the community and supportive of ministries like yours don't want to do it just for the bright lights, but want to do it quietly and for the benefit of a community organization like yours, which is seeking to bring a light to that east side of Battle Creek.
And I appreciate that. Thank you very much for that.
It was my pleasure to work in the janitor's closet off the stage specifically, and I carried a lot of chairs, and that's not easy at the old Southeastern Junior High, the South Hill Academy. I took all the chairs from the auditorium up those multiple different steps, and then we transferred those to one of the former classrooms toward the east end of the middle school, now your church.
Yep. Well,
and I was very excited to see that after all these years, since the South Hill Academy has been closed, that you've brought resurrection back to that building, which I think is a grand old building, and I'm really looking forward to the ministry that your church will be serving in that east end of Battle Creek.
Yes, yes.
Now, I'm from Muskegon originally.
Okay.
My parents were foreign missionaries. Muskegon was the home base, but they were foreign missionaries in Africa. I went to school overseas in Africa. I actually never graduated from an American high school. I have a General Certificate of Education from the African high school that doesn't give you a diploma, but gives you a GCE, or a General Certificate of Education. And then I came back to the States in 1976 and started college and graduated from Michigan State. Went to graduate school at the University of Denver, and then decided I would go to law school. I graduated from law school at Wayne State in Detroit in 1984, passed the bar exam that summer. I started working for Legal Aid of Western Michigan, which is a legal aid agency servicing Muskegon, Kent, Montcalm, Mecosta counties to the northwest of here, and lived in my home city of Muskegon from the time I passed the bar until 1988. I joined my present firm from the legal aid office in Muskegon, doing that in 1987. And then I had the opportunity, because we had a satellite office in Battle Creek, to come and serve in the Battle Creek office of McCroskey Law between 1988 and 1989. And then I moved back to Muskegon. Was there between 1989 and 94 with the same law firm, and then in 1994 an opportunity became available for me to move to Battle Creek. I had really enjoyed it when I was here the year. I enjoyed continuing to come down and serve clients from the Muskegon office between 89 and 94, and took the opportunity to move with my then very young family down to Battle Creek in 1994. And I've served as a law partner with McCroskey Law, practicing principally workers' disability comp and Social Security disability, representing injured workers and consumers since 1987, and have done so in Battle Creek since 1994. So I'm privileged to have had the opportunity to serve in a noble profession, one in which I have to act on behalf of a lot of people who are in emergency circumstances. I became active in politics locally. I actually was active in politics in Muskegon before that time, but locally I became active in politics in 1996. I helped Mark Schauer run for the Michigan House his first time when he was yet a city commissioner. And then I became continuously active in the political scene in Battle Creek and Calhoun County from that point forward. In 2008, a friend of mine who I had helped become elected to the Calhoun County Commission indicated to me that she would be moving from the community and would not be running for re-election to the county board. So this was then the first time I had decided I would put my own name on a ballot and run, as opposed to campaign for other people like Mark Schauer. So this was the first time I was bold enough to put my name on a ballot, and I ran in 2008 and did win. I've enjoyed my time on the Calhoun County Board of Commissioners. I served for 4 terms between the advent of 2009, so following the 2008 election, until the end of 2016. I did run for State House in 2016 and faced a difficult decision, because I could have run for county board again and stayed in the same place, but I determined with a lot of thought and prayer that I would run for State House in 2016. And sometimes things aren't meant to be for whatever reason, and it was a campaign which, although I enjoyed it significantly, fell short by 209 votes of about 37,500. So I didn't know what the future held. It was the end of my county board career at that point. And then John Bison, who was the victor in his campaign for re-election in 2016, announced in June 2017 that he would be running for the Michigan Senate. And so people came to me and asked me about running again. And again, with some thought, prayer, consideration with my family, determined I would do it again. I enjoy it. I enjoy the opportunity to make new friends and reestablish old friendships. I get an opportunity to see a lot of people at places like the AccessVision studio right now, or at doors. I certainly enjoy that part of the campaigning. Listening to stories, as you said, that is a very important part of communication. Yes. Listening to stories of people at their doors. Some people are in great distress, some people who haven't had a friendly person come around and see them for a while. Mm-hmm. And I enjoy that part of it. I've been doing that this afternoon right up until I think about 5:15 when I quit for the afternoon, so I could have the honor of doing this program with you this evening. Family-wise, my former wife Betsy and I have 4 children. They are 26, 24, 22, and 19. And those kids are one, a Michigan State Supreme Court employee, the oldest a daughter, and then the next one works at General Motors, the 24-year-old in Warren. And then I have two kids who are a senior and a freshman presently at Albion College. Okay. So I have a very active and sometimes expensive family life too.
Yeah.
As I'm sure many of us do when we invest in families.
Well, I appreciate that intro. I got a few questions that that's going to help us out. As you mentioned, were a former Calhoun County Commissioner. I was too. How does that job help prepare you for the state seat? Or if it did, what you think about that?
I think it does. There's no question, as you know from your service, you have an opportunity sort of at a more modest level to respond to issues that constituents bring to you, whether it be I don't have a working street lamp somewhere in the Post edition,
True.
to
Yes.
I have tree roots that are ending my sidewalk and I need someone to attend to that, and I can connect someone with the city of Battle Creek. Certainly more significant issues involved during my tenure, issues like the Enbridge oil spill and issues concerning the Calhoun County roads and what we would do, if anything, differently about how we were responding to crumbling roads and infrastructure in Calhoun County. And I definitely think with an opportunity to do that for 8 years, as you well know from your experience, Bishop Smith, it gives you training
Yep.
and transferable skills that you can bring to a larger setting in a state context. I also learned, and I learned a lot of interesting things as a county board member, things that a lot of people wouldn't know the county board does. Everything from funding the prosecuting attorney's office to ensuring that the public health department is properly funded to ensuring that the road department is properly outfitted to snowplow roads. And I think that that kind of information leads me, especially having served on the budget committee of the County of Calhoun for 6 years of that 8 years term, to, I think, realize that the budget can be used as a tool and can be used as a tool from a state perspective to shape public policy in a way that I think is desirous for the most citizens of our state and do it at the most cost-efficient way for the most number of taxpayers. So I think that that kind of experience does outfit one well to serve in a higher office. I would certainly commend somebody serving in a context like a city commission or a county commission before running for a higher office like a state representative office.
Yeah, and you kind of answered my second question. What are some of the things you accomplished on the county board that's relevant to you seeking the seat that you're seeking? And you mentioned a few things, but just kind of highlight some more things you accomplished as a county board member that you think is kind of relevant to the seat you're seeking right now.
Well, we had to, again, most importantly, I think, work with a finite number of dollars and ensure that each year we came in under budget, and yet ensured that the roads were in some hopeful state of improvement, and that the front of the court had adequate resources to do its job, and additionally that the equalization department, or departments people don't know about very much, were also properly staffed. So one of the things we had to do was consider, with a time of especially diminishing resources, and if you recall 2008-9 when I came in was a time when there was the Great American Recession, as it's now being looked back at 10 years later and called, and we had some diminishing resources in Calhoun County, so we had to make some strategies to work collaboratively with neighboring counties like Jackson County. We had to work collaboratively to work together with different municipalities to, for example, maximize our dollars and bring about a consolidated dispatch service which served better more people who needed emergency dispatch services. But in relation to working with Jackson, we work collaboratively as a road department with the County of Jackson and its road commission to share resources, to share asphalt making facility, and come about with some smarter ways to do business, I think. I had to work collaboratively with, for the most part during that period, a majority of Republicans on the county board. And I appreciated your statement that we can't always reflexively vote for one party or the other. We have to vote for a person who's best going to represent us and going to be most able to represent us, and not let those who are lobbyists lead us around. And I worked with Republicans across the aisle, and we made some tough decisions, like were we going to continue the road commission activities as they had been done through a time in 2011, or were we going to try something different? And we determined to consolidate the road commission into the county government and have it become the Calhoun County Road Department, with the county administrator controller having power specifically over the road department. And I think as a result, we have had some improvements in a lot of the roads in the county since the first part of last decade. We had improvements especially in the northwestern townships of Calhoun County, some townships which determined to go forward and have a stake in the outcome of their roads together with the county by passing a road millage. Counties like townships like Albion Township. But I think as a result, you go to certain townships in our county and the roads are a lot better than they were 10 years ago. Now there are other townships in our county where I think challenges continue to exist, like Emmett, like Marengo, some other townships that are more centrally located in the county. And I'd hope that with a greater stake by townships like Emmett and Marengo in the future, the county might come forward and do as much as it did in townships like Albion Township and townships like Bedford Township.
I have a question for Jim, too.
Okay, but before I say that, we're going to give y'all a chance to ask Jim a few questions. Just a few more things I want to ask before we get to that section, but please hold on. We'll go through your questions and try to scroll it. DJ has that for you. But go ahead and ask the question.
There was recently a stoppage in work. I don't know if it was statewide or just in the city. I was kind of listening to it on the news the other day, where all the roads, and the roads, a lot of the roads in Calhoun County, I have seen that they have improved. There are some roads improved, but there was a stoppage here recently where none of the road commission, they weren't working.
Yes.
What was that about?
Well, I'm not part of that specifically, but I read the newspaper articles about that. And as I understand it, there was a labor management relations controversy, and the union representing those road workers were, or perhaps still are as we speak right now,
in negotiation?
Yes, in dispute. So it's important, if that hasn't been resolved yet, that be resolved quickly, because we only have, as the two of you well know, probably about 6 to 8 weeks left of good road production improvement time. So I'm hopeful that will be resolved. But that was an issue involving labor management relations at a higher level than the county.
Okay, all right.
So I have a team, well, actually a key person that helps me out with some of these questions. And you're running on the Democratic ticket. We know that. So tell me some things that the Democrat stands for. And before you respond, African Americans have traditionally been Democrats for decades, as I mentioned in my intro. So tell us why you think that is so, and I'll bring it up if I need to. And do you see that as a positive thing, or do you think that African Americans should seek out which party suits them best? And I can slow it down if you want.
I'm a Democrat. Bishop Smith, been a Democrat since I first was able to vote in 1976. I'm a Democrat because, from my perspective, that's the party which represents the interest of the people who want to have a part of the American dream. that want to have a chance. From my perspective, and this is more so now than I think it was in the Republican Party of my youth and my young adulthood. From my perspective, the Republican Party has been mostly about vested interest and has not been supportive of giving people as much of an opportunity. In terms of economic issues, I think that the Democratic Party is a party which supports ensuring a wage on which someone can support her or his family. I would be supportive of an increase in the minimum wage. That was something that was introduced by initiative this summer, and as the two of you probably know, just last week, I think the State House, in a very disingenuous way, passed a law which in fact is an implant of that initiative, but did so with the declaration that they will go ahead and perhaps review that in the lame duck session after the November election, before the next term of the State House and the State Senate. I think that that's one of the reasons why I'm a Democrat. I think we're transparent. We don't play that kind of trickery that you talked about at the outset, and I want to talk about some more of that in a moment, that parties have sometimes played on voters in the past. I want to talk about it in the context of the straight party voting issue.
Yep, that's going to come up too.
Yes,
Yeah, that's the question.
because that's an issue about which I'm quite passionate.
Okay.
But I would support an increase in the minimum wage. I support ensuring that more people have health insurance. Bill Schuette, who is the gubernatorial candidate for the Republican Party, is antagonistic to the fact that we had over 600,000 people after the April 1, 2014 Medicaid expansion come on to Medicaid rolls. And from my perspective, there are many people who have had lives saved by reason of the Medicaid expansion. I know this because before the Medicaid expansion occurred, there were many people I represented, say in workers' disability compensation or Social Security disability cases, who did not have any health coverage at all and were not able to get any treatment, could not take medications that most of us take for granted if we're sick with something like hypertension. These people, if they got treatment, were getting treatment at something like the Presbyterian Church in Coldwater or at a clinic in Marshall, and it was better than none, but there was not any MRI studies, there were not diagnostic workup like EMGs, so many of these people just became sicker, and I'm assuredly confident that some people probably lost their lives because they weren't getting medical attention in the way that they should have. Now, since that Medicaid expansion, I think this is very important. Lots of people are getting much better medical treatment than used to be so, and I think there's a savings to the state in that regard, because if people aren't treated at the outset and their conditions aren't remedied early on, it's much more likely they're going to get more sick and then become wards of the state, possibly end up in long-term care facilities or something like that. So I'm certainly supportive of the opportunities that we have had come through Medicaid expansion. I'm supportive of the opportunities many of us who are working class people have had through the Affordable Care Act under President Obama. I think that that is a benefit that we don't want to have diluted by reason of efforts to shortchange the Affordable Care Act by making fewer subsidies available.
We have a grassroots organization, and the group I just been back almost shy of 2 years, so a lot of us didn't know you or don't know you or the other candidates. So I'm going to ask this question because there's some key people who I'm very dear to that know you very well and have a lot of good things to say about you. I just wanted to ask you, what would you say your relationship is like with the African American community in Battle Creek along with Albion, because many of our audience view this talk show. So what would you say your relationship is with the African American community?
I think my relationship with the African American community in Battle Creek
Yes.
is, and I will say that much more so than Albion, because although I have gone to some Albion NAACP dinners, I have not been nearly as engaged in Albion because I live here.
Right.
I think the Albion community often radiates toward Jackson, more so than even Battle Creek. But my interaction with the African American community in Battle Creek is very solidly good. I have served with the NAACP locally in different manners, including on the Legal Redress Committee for many years. I've been involved with different presidents, President Whitfield, President Roberta Cribbs, and I'm a lifetime member of the NAACP. My engagement is also through the Urban League. I am a board member of the Urban League and am involved and a giver in relation to the causes of the Urban League. I have represented many in the African American community as a lawyer in relation to their client needs for many years and have many referral sources. I have many friends in the African American faith community, like William Wine from Second Baptist, who will give you great testimony of our work together, for example, at the Haven of Rest Ministries Board. I'm a friend of Carl English and a friend of Mike Campbell, and have been for many years. We did a program for the NAACP called People's Law School. And I think we did that for 8 or 10 years, and Carl and Mike received accolades for that and awards from AccessVision for their work. So I've been in this studio many times asking lawyers, judges, administrative law judges, not-for-profit presidents of their role in ensuring racial justice in our community and what they're doing to try to ensure that those in the African American community, especially in a justice context, have a fair shake.
We have one question that we're going to ask from watching us on the feeder. Go ahead, Deegan.
This question is from one of our viewers. You might know Rochelle Nunley Hatcher.
I certainly do.
And she
friend
asked
of
this
mine.
question. Good. She says, Jim, I recently found a Battle Creek Inquirer. There's an article from February 2016 about the first meth operation suite. It's now 2 years later, and Calhoun County has one of the highest opioid problems in Michigan. What plans can we put together to start helping our community and bring our family units together?
The opioid crisis is real. I know that from clients I represent, and I know that the fact that they're on oxycodone or Percocet is a real problem. And I think we have to work collaboratively. Rochelle, as a would-be county commissioner, involved with the local health department, and the local health department involved with our statewide health officials to ensure that we follow the prescription processes of doctors and ensure that medications are being properly prescribed. There are some people who absolutely need that kind of pain management that's associated with Norco, say. And I think we have to be very vigilant about the rights of patients too. But we also have to carefully monitor what doctors are doing, what the pharmacists are doing at the pharmacies. And by doing that, hopefully bring down the number of opioid prescriptions that are being given out and the opportunity for people to sell on the street opioid medications.
So people are legally getting the opioids and then they're selling them?
I think that that's so. I've never been a witness, but that's what I understand, and I'm certain from reports I've heard that that's so. The other thing that we really need to do is ensure that there's a better strategy for ensuring that medication abuse prevention is taught. And we have programs like the Substance Abuse Council, which is about prevention. And I was very involved in the Substance Abuse Council as a county board member, I'm very supportive of its mission, very supportive of substance abuse prevention services over in Albion and its mission. I also think we need a lot more counseling when people have become, because it's an easy hill slope to go down. If they become addicted to these medications, we have to have more counseling services, and we have to have more funding. This is where the budget comes in play. From your knowledge as a county board member, Bishop Smith, you know that we need a budget that gives some money more generously to counseling services to help people get off medications like Norco or Percocet or oxycodone.
So this is your second run for State House, as you stated. How are things looking at this time? If you had to have a fishbowl or this magic wand, how's things looking for you? How are things looking for you right now?
I don't know. As baseball players always say when they're trying to evade, I take one day at a time, and I'm not trying to evade. I just don't know.
Okay.
So I work very hard as if I were way behind to prevail, do the best I can to prevail come November 6th, because I know it was a very disheartening experience for me on November 8, 2016. I don't want to go through that again, so I'm working very hard every day. I try to knock doors to the tune of 250 personal doors around our community a week. That's a lot of doors to personally hit, especially when you can't control variables like rain and family day at Albion College when your freshman is expecting his parents there. But I try to do that. I try to control the controllable, another baseball maxim.
Exactly.
So I can't control things that are outside of my control, like the straight party voting and whether we have it or not, but I try to control issues that are within my ability to at least try to control, and that would mean meet the most number of voters and try to do a good job on a fundraising perspective as well. So I think things are going as I would wish them to go at this point, but I learned in 2016 you can try your best, and sometimes you just can't win, and there are variables outside of your control that are not going to be met just by knocking a lot of doors or strategies in terms of marketing what your mission might be about to go to the State House.
Well, this is your opportunity. You know, this is Campaign 101. Why would you make the best candidate? You are running against Dave Morgan, correct?
That's correct.
Why would you make the best candidate?
Well, one of the reasons is, as you've described, I have the better experience. I have 8 years on the county board. Mr. Morgan, respectively, has about a year and a half as a township supervisor. And I'm not trying to suggest that a township government isn't as important as a county board government, but they're different kinds of governments, and I think that State House is more akin to the government in terms of county than it is to the much smaller governmental unit as is township government. I have the experience of working with a lot of divergent personalities. I know a lot of community leaders from many years of working in the field, not just as a county board member, but as historically a lawyer, as a board member of many not-for-profits, including the Arts Center and the aforementioned Haven, the Urban League, so Salvation Army Advisory Board. I have a lot of experience of working with a lot of people, and I think I excel at connecting a person with a problem with the problem solver. It's not always me, but if I know the person who can solve a specific problem, say a water issue, I know to whom to go. And I think that matters. I just have more experience, and I also have 34 years of advocacy on behalf of individuals in a lot of multifaceted venues as a lawyer. And I think I can advocate well for my community, and I can advocate well for my community without being tainted by someone who, in a lobby context, is going to try to take me by the nose ring and bring me in a different direction than that which my community deserves. So I think I'm better equipped by experience and better equipped by the profession I've chosen and by temperament to withstand the temptation of being just a yes vote, a comfortable yes vote by, say, the Republican leadership in the State House or the Democratic leadership in the State House, and to be independent, thoughtful, and considerate most about the voters I represent in Battle Creek, Albion, and the other parts of the 62nd District.
Okay. So because we are, I believe it's one of the most intelligent audience that watch this show, and I thank you all for watching, and because we have many people that is considering voting, obviously, in November, I'm going to ask Jim a question, and just to educate our audience when you deal with who runs the House. So I understand that the Republicans have the majority in the House, so I want everybody to understand that. And if elected, I'm talking to Jim now. Now, the Republicans, they already have the majority. So if Jim is elected, he would come into the minority party. What that means is they don't have as much of influence. I want y'all to understand that. My question will be, it's going to be hard to pass bills. They won't be on influential committees. Hard to bring the money back. I would like to know, with that difficult situation, tell us how you still can make some changes in Lansing, or just kind of what I said, you can kind of go against that, because everybody got to start fresh. Everybody don't have a chance to always walk into. That is true. The Republicans do run the House, correct? In Lansing?
They do presently.
Presently, right. Yeah. So you coming on, is there enough, do you see enough Democrats coming in if all those individuals win? Because yes. I'm only looking at you and your district because I represent my district, but kind of educate us on that. Help educate the audience that right now the Republican is running the House.
I don't think that'll continue respectfully, so I'm going to start with that premise.
Do that for me.
We've had over 7.5 years of one-party rule in Lansing, and it hasn't worked.
7.5 years?
Yes.
It's been 7.5 years that the Republicans has ruled the party.
We've had Governor Snyder in office for over 7.5 years. We've had a state Senate which is very, very Republican, hyper-Republican majority. Since 1983, it's been in Republican control. And then we have a state House which has gone back and forth over the years, but at least since the 2010 election, it's been in the hands of the Republican Party. In addition, our Michigan Supreme Court, although nonpartisan, features justices who are elected as nominated by their parties. We've had a 5-2 Republican majority in the state Supreme Court for much of that period I just described. 4-3 earlier in that period I just described, Republican majority. So what I would ask your audience is, are you really satisfied with what you've experienced in the past 7.5 years? And I would suggest most should not be. We have crumbling infrastructure. We have stagnant wages. We have water issues like that which evolved in Flint in 2015, and that which is evolving in places as diverse as Rockford, Oscoda, Parchment, and Springfield. Springfield, right near where we're speaking right now, an enclave that's surrounded by Battle Creek, PFAS in the waters. So I think with stagnant wages, poor infrastructure, seniors whose pensions are being taxed now because of a change in tax policy by which corporations were relieved of some of their tax obligations, and working people and seniors were assigned more taxation by reason of Republican tax policy. I think it's time for a change. I think we will have a change. The State House has 110 House members, And notwithstanding gerrymandering, which has existed, and that's the subject of proposal 2, and a subject of another program that I'm confident you probably have. I appreciate these programs that you're doing, Bishop Smith.
Thank you.
And Deacon Jones. It's very important to have this kind of information given to our community members, because our Battle Creek Inquirer is eviscerated from what it used to be. We just don't have much of a newspaper. It's not because the journalists who are there aren't trying really hard. It's just because they just don't have enough to cover all that they used to cover. We used to have, I'm sure when you were a county board member, there was always someone from the Battle Creek Inquirer present to cover whatever the county board was doing every night.
Every night.
That was so for a couple years when I was on the county board, and then gradually it's not. What I'm telling you is we just don't have enough opportunity to get news. So what you're doing is a very important community service. 110 members of our state House of Representatives. The Democrats have a great chance, I think, this autumn of taking the majority, and that's just over 55. And everybody's up this year, and notwithstanding some gerrymandered districts, I think we have some very strong candidates in different parts of the state. And this is a district that's being watched very closely. I think if I win and several other Democrats win in open seat context around the state, we should have a Democratic majority in the state house. And I think that really matters, because I think what we haven't had for over 7.5 years is some kind of circuit breaker. The Republicans have had control of everything, as I've just described, and we need a circuit breaker, at least in the state house. I think we're going to have a Democratic governor in the candidate Whitmer presently. So I think we could have a Democratic governor with Gretchen Whitmer. I think we could have a Democratic House. Democratic Senate is not likely because of gerrymandering, but it's possible. But we could accomplish some things together in context of a Democratic House majority and a Democratic governor that we haven't been able to accomplish for 7.5 years. And to your point, is there a great deal of relevance to someone who is in the minority? I don't think so. I think you're left with doing a lot of ornamental things like passing resolutions and reading them to the Kiwanis Club and things like that. You can work collaboratively if you're there for a while, but I think in a time of term limits, it really becomes not as relevant. So in a way, and I said before, it didn't work out the way I planned it in 2016, but I'm hopeful that God had a purpose in that. And that purpose is that I can serve in a majority in 2018 and have 2 more terms in a term-limited time in Michigan after that, so I can serve 6 years in a majority and get some things accomplished that I probably wouldn't have been able to accomplish because I wouldn't have been able to get any bills even out of committee, more likely than not, over the last 1.5 years. But I think that we are going to have majority, and we are going to have some of our experienced Democratic legislators as heads of those committees. Now, if that were not to be the case, I've already demonstrated my ability to work well together with Republicans.
Right.
And I am not going to be someone who's just there to take some salary and to go about passing resolutions and coming back and reading those to the Rotary Club. That's not going to be what I'm going to be about. I'm going to be working across the aisle to get some common sense legislation to accomplish some problems that we have in our community. And if I'm not able to do that because of recalcitrance on the part of Republican legislators, believe me, I'll be working really hard in 2020 to get some more Democrats elected in other districts so we can have a majority and be relevant. But I expect to be relevant in 2019, 2020.
Tell us about some of your supporters. I was reading in the paper where Dave Morgan had the Teamster to endorse them. And the Teamster, as we both know, usually was reserved for the Democrat candidate when I was involved. Who are some of your supporters?
I have the support and support by endorsement and PAC by virtually all the other organized labor organizations. I did not get an invitation to seek an endorsement from the Teamsters unit, of which he claims to have an endorsement. So we didn't have an opportunity to be in play for that endorsement if there were an endorsement. So I can't speak to that. I can tell you that I have the experience of representing Teamsters members in workers' disability compensation cases. And I have the experience of representing people in unemployment compensation context. Those people are only entitled to 20 weeks of unemployment compensation benefits presently because of some very regressive Republican policies, which took away the 26 weeks of unemployment compensation we had in Michigan since I can remember, and brought us back to a steadfast $362 per hour without any tie-in to inflation for the past many years. I would be the kind of labor advocate who would strive to get unemployment compensation restored to 26 weeks and some sort of weekly unemployment compensation benefit tied to an inflation index, so we wouldn't be stuck at $362 a week if we become unemployed like we were 10 or so years ago. I certainly am supportive of prevailing wage, which the Republicans ruled out by legislative action this past summer. I'm supportive of it because it's like the old Fram oil commercial ad when I was a child, where the advertising spokesman came out and said, you can put an oil filter in now, you can pay me now a little bit, or you can pay me later a lot more if you didn't make that kind of preventative maintenance action. And by that I mean if we have a sensible prevailing wage program where we're getting skilled laborers working on a project for, say, the community college, that way we know we're going to get our money's worth, and we're not going to have to come back and repair it just a few years later and spend more money in the remediation. So I am supportive of doing something about the right to work that we have. That is a misnomer that allow people to opt out of unions and get the benefit of union membership without paying union dues. So essentially it was intended by the Republicans in 2011-12 when it was passed, I think 2012, to emaciate the organized labor movement in Michigan. This is a state in which organized labor really, 1937 Flint sit-down strike, really has its genesis. And we've become a state under this Republican leadership, one-party rule of the past 7.5 years, which I think, as I sometimes say, is trying to out-Indiana. And by that I mean we are trying to race to the bottom, and we're trying to take away all the benefits, the opportunities that our hardworking men and women who work day in, day out to try to put food on the table for their families. We're trying to take away the protections that those back in 1937 Flint and back in the 1940s, when we got the Labor Management Relations Act through a lot of concerted activity, collective concerted activity, we have been, in the last 7.5 years, taking away a lot of those protections.
Okay, well, Jim, we got 10 more minutes, about 7 more minutes. I got 5 more minutes. I got 2 major important questions. The straight ticket we may have to pass. There's been a big conversation about can a felon in Michigan vote? And we've had 2 different, they said if you have a felony, but if the felony is no longer, if you know, break that down for me. Can a person with a felony vote?
Yes. So
in Michigan, break that down. I want 2 minutes and 1 more question. Break that down for me if possible.
Well, I think I've broken it down
You say yes, but
as well as it should be broken down.
But there are some people that have got in trouble. Is yes if you're not still involved? How that works?
If you served your time.
If you serve your time.
If you served your time, you're a convicted felon. You have the right to vote.
You have a right to vote.
And
okay.
I think it's surprising to me how often, Bishop Smith, there's confusion about this. And I think there's confusion because a felon understandably thinks that she doesn't have a fair chance in the future of remediation.
Okay.
And that individual has the same right to vote that Deacon Jones or I or you have to vote.
Okay,
And they should
okay.
know that unequivocally.
Well, that's important. Listen, I am grateful. I talked to Dave earlier during the talk show. Would you be willing to have a debate with him?
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, you heard it. We're going to have a debate with Mr. Morgan and Mr. Hossman. I am just grateful that he came on the show. I've been looking forward, and I'm excited that you came. I do appreciate all the things that you said today. Listen, our time has expired that quickly. I'm grateful for all of you that came on the show. You heard it here. We're going to have a debate at the campus where we'll bring both of the gentlemen, and we will have questions that you in the community will put together. I'm asking you now to get your questions ready. Fair questions, honest questions that we would like to hear, so we as intelligent people can vote for the right candidate. I always acknowledge my ancestors, my late father, the great late Hugh Smith Sr., and my grandparents, Gussie Smith and Edward West Smith, where I got my name from. And on my mother's side, thank God she's still alive and well in my life. I love her to death, Georgia Howard Perry. But unfortunately, my grandmother, Ruby Elizabeth Perry, and Lil Dale Perry Sr. Understand the tribe of Issachar. They understood the time. And we have to understand what time we live in. I got to be honest. I'm impressed. I didn't know he was a missionary in Africa. And his education, he has a certificate/degree diploma from Africa. That's pretty huge.
I didn't have much to do with it. My
kept
parents
that
were
secret.
there.
But we're going to dismiss in prayer. So we put our hands together and we thank you. Father, we thank you for this privilege. We thank you for this opportunity. We thank you for this gentleman that came and he shared his ideas, his information, and his experience. Thank you for the viewing audience. And now bless our city. This is our prayer. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bishop Smith, it's
Man,
my
thank you,
privilege
man.
to be on.
Jim?
Doctors make the people well. They're the ones who suffer and who catch all the hell. They don't have something at all.
AccessVision, your voice, your community.